Hey guys, Kitchen Table Magician here. Welcome to this episode of Strange Brew. This is the Erhnamgeddon edition. This is a really throwback deck. I wanted to, in honor of the 25th anniversary of Magic: The Gathering, a game that I've been playing for at least 24 years, I wanted to share with you one of my earliest and first, what I would call real fairly competitive builds. This was called Erhnamgeddon. There are many variations on this, a couple of them that actually won a lot of world championships and things like that. But this is my take on it from what I remember from back in the day. And it revolves around two very iconic cards. And as far as Wizards has announced that they are releasing Iconic Masters very shortly, and everybody is speculating on what could be or should be in that set. And in my opinion, I think both Armageddon and Erhnam Djinn are very good candidates for getting reprinted in that set. The whole deck was very iconic back in the day, and it was one of the very earliest power decks that was in the tournament scene. So I'm just going to share you with a little bit about the philosophy behind this deck, what it's trying to do, and my take on it. So basically with Armageddon, you're just wiping out all of the lands on the table. So you want to be able to drop a really big threat really early and then wipe lands and then keep your opponent out of from being able to recover from that. And so Erhnam Djinn was a very big threat way back 24 years ago. It's a 4/5 for 4, which isn't that big a deal today. But back then that was huge. It was easy to get into this guy. And his drawback is that during your upkeep, target non-wall creature an opponent controls gains Forest Walk to your next turn. But obviously, if there are no lands on the table, this is not a problem for you. So that's why this deck worked so well. So my build is 4 Armageddons, right? Because that's you're building around this, and then 4 Erhnam Djinns, because that's the meat and potatoes. You've got your land wipe and your nice big early threat that you can get into. Of course, you want to be able to ramp into this. So you run your 4 Birds of Paradise, right? Any color you want. This is nice and quick. You sweep all the lands. You've still got birds laying around. And obviously 4 Llanowar Elves. You know, again, this deck runs so many iconic cards. Both of these also would be fine candidates for getting reprinted in Iconic Masters. Birds of Paradise, Llanowar Elves. These are just some of the earliest, most iconic building blocks of the game. Also, Soul Ring would be a fine candidate for this. You want to run your Soul Ring, right? Because you're going to be, again, Armageddoning for days. Mana Vault would be another fine candidate for reprint in Iconic Masters. I'm telling you, this whole deck is just iconic. So those are 2 of the best mana rocks available in the history of the game, really, and certainly back in the day. Run those. Now this was fun. Zuran Orb. If you had this on the board just before you were firing off an Armageddon, you go ahead and load up your whole mana pool, then sacrifice all your lands, and then play Armageddon. And so you're gaining 2 life for each land you sacrifice. So this was always a fun little trick in that deck. And then of course you run another iconic card, Balance. This can work as a 5th Armageddon for you. It also just equalizes creatures on the board. If you've got your Erhnam Djinn out and they have 3 or 4 other smaller creatures out, you could balance, get them down to just the 1 smaller creature, which makes it very hard to deal with your Djinn. And then, of course, we have Swords to Plowshares, which also would be a fine candidate for reprint in Iconic Masters. It just keeps coming, guys. It just keeps coming. 4 copies of Swords. This is the most efficient removal, probably in the history of the game as far as white goes. It's just so damn good. And I don't think Wizards ever printed anything better. Maybe Path to Exile comes close, but I still think Swords is better even with the life swing. Alright, so once you've got all of that under control, maybe a little later in the game, maybe you can back it up with a Serra Angel or 2, which could also be a reprint in Iconic Masters, I'm telling you. So I've got a pair of them. I had a pair of them in my deck. You know what another thing Wizards needs to do? If, in fact, they do reprint some of this stuff in Iconic Masters, please, Wizards, please do not give us new artwork. Go ahead and update the frames to the modern frame, But this artwork is just so ingrained in anybody's mind that's been in this game for a while. And I think even new players would appreciate having cards that just look nostalgic. You know what I mean? So maybe update the frame. But we've got tons and tons of new artwork for especially Serra Angel, and it's all good. But man, bring it back like this. This would be spectacular with the modern frame. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I think that would be a great idea. All right, and then the rest of the deck is just what I call kind of aggressive turbo-y. So super cheap, efficient creatures. Couple of 1/1 flying Mesa Pagasus, which again I love this artwork too. I wouldn't consider this probably to be an iconic card, but I do love the artwork on that. This old school artwork just is so good. 4 Scryb Sprites, and this could be a contender for reprint in Iconic Masters, right? Scryb Sprite, the little 1/1 flyer for green. 4 of those. So you're just looking for some cheap creatures. Savannah Lions, for sure. You know, maybe in today's world, Savannah Lions isn't that spectacular, but let me tell you, 24 years ago, a 2/1 for 1 mana was amazing. It was just amazing. So I used to have 4 for some reason. I must have traded 1 off, so I've only got 3 here today. And then I just rounded off with a set of giant growths so that you can get in some nice big hits as well, quickly and fairly aggressively and early. And a 1 of Disenchant, just because back in the day I used to include a Disenchant in every white deck that I built. I just main decked it. I never felt bad about that. All right, and then believe it or not, there was a time in Magic's history where it was tournament legal to play 4 strip mines. You can today I believe this card is restricted to 1 copy, but there was a time where this was legit and you could run 4 copies of this. So the deck runs 4 copies of this to go along with those Armageddons. So even after you've swept the board and your opponent does maybe manage to get a land or 2 out, you can strip mine them away. This thing is just brutal. And again, this could be considered for a reprint in Iconic Masters too, right? Outside of that, I just have mine rounded out with forests and plains. Back in the day, I would have run some dual lands probably, some of the Ice Age, maybe a Brushlands or something like that, just for the dual lands. But for this build, I've just got forests and plains. So, I mean, this is a very old deck. I've had it around for a long, long time. I do remember playing with it and having a lot of fun with it. So I hope you've enjoyed this trip way, way back. This is such a throwback deck. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you one of the earliest, most iconic decks in the history of the game. All right, well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. As always, comments are welcome at the bottom and feedback. And if you like this video and want to see more of this, thumbs up and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.